All right, this is the Pro Wrestling Illustrated podcast. I'm your host, PWI senior writer Al Castle, joined by my co-host, as always, Brian Solomon. How's it going?
Going really well. Happy to be here as always. Al.
Is it winter break for your kids? It is for mine.
Not in our school district. And he just got the 4-day weekend that ended with President's Day. But, a lot of other districts had this whole week off.
Yeah, it's a lot of teenagers sitting on my couch looking bored and hungry, and I've got to work and somehow entertain them.
I remember those days, and I look forward to them again.
Yes. And we've got the bored teenager of PWI, at least relative to us, PWI Editor-in-Chief Kevin McElvaney. How's it going, Kevin?
Going well, going well. I don't know what to make of that descriptor, but I guess I'll take it. I guess it's calling me young, maybe?
Yeah, I guess relative to us. So
Okay.
Haven't you been on the PWI staff for 20 years? I mean,
Yeah, pretty much.
what is it? How long is it now? Yeah, I think I was there a little before you.
Yeah, so I think actually, Al, I think you have more time than me, but I joined the staff slightly before you. So my first article
Really?
was
Okay.
in late 2006. But I
Really?
left
Okay, yeah.
a year or two, and that's around when you joined. So I think you cumulatively have more time than me.
Were you literally a teenager back then?
I was literally a teenager.
Wow.
No, wait, nope. It was just out of college. I was early 20s.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, glad to have you here.
you're talking to a middle-aged man like he's a teenager.
What does that make me?
I don't know. Old.
Well, I'm here in my dungeon basement. Let me turn this light up a little bit.
Am I the oldest one here? I'm 51.
Yes.
Okay.
I believe you are. Yeah. I just turned 48 a couple weeks ago.
We'll get Matt Brock on a future
Yes.
episode, and then you won't feel as
What is Matt? Matt's got to be three
150
digits,
Yeah.
I think, for sure.
He's hovering around 100 for sure.
Yeah.
Anywho, speaking of things with a lot of history in PWI, today we're going to be discussing the 2020. Do we call them the 2025 Achievement Awards or 2026
Yes.
Achievement Awards? 2025 Achievement Awards. Spoiler. Yeah, we've been doing this. I mean, it actually predates Pro Wrestling Illustrated, right? I mean, the original Achievement Awards were in The Wrestler, right?
They were in, some years they were in Sports Review Wrestling originally. Yeah, they go, what is it, 72, 73?
Yes, they got to be more than 50 years now.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and different than all the rankings that we do, the PWI 500, the women's 250, the tag team list. This is chosen by you, the readers, the fans. So don't blame us. And to that end, I don't necessarily agree with some of these, even though I don't think that not too many hot takes, controversial takes.
And you also want to stress that Dave Meltzer had nothing to do with it.
So it's interesting because Meltzer's getting so much heat for his awards right now.
Oh,
that
that's
readers picked, and
Yes.
then like us, certainly readers' opinions are shaped by the coverage that the publication gives. But at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, editor-in-chief, I don't I think some of these make a lot of sense, and otherwise I'm like, why'd they go with them?
I'm guessing Brian doesn't protest too much the Observer Awards this time around. Did you get the book award?
Well, there was one award that I agreed with.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
Brian's the first solo author to win that award twice.
Yes, and I want to clarify why I say that. So Brian Alvarez won it 3 times, but 2 out of the 3 times he was a co-author. And 2 out of the 3 times it was for the same book, but just a revised edition of that book. So, and he works for Dave. So I just want to put that.
Yeah.
Brian, I think you just have to get 2 more bestsellers in there, and then there won't be any caveats or asterisks, and it'll just be better
And
for
I
everyone.
also want to say that I actually had the opportunity to directly, not face to face, but directly defend the PWI Awards to Jim Cornette because I co-hosted,
right.
I was his guest co-host, and I got to take a stand and say, look, those are voted by the readers. They're that take it up with the readers. So I got to take a stand. I want everyone to know.
Well, we appreciate it. And congratulations. Well deserved. Terrific book. Go get it if you haven't.
Irresistible Force, The Life and Times of Gorilla Monsoon.
Yes. Excellent. Yeah.
Brian, do you still have the signed copies left?
I have a few copies.
Trunk full of them, right?
Yes.
More about that in plugs.
Yeah. Well, as the whole sort of episode here is probably being one big plug. I mean, we'll get out of the way and say head on over to pwa-online.com. Pick this up. This is right up there with the 500 the ranking issues. A real cornerstone tentpole of PWI's calendar year. I always loved digging into this when I was a kid. We talk about every year the what are the silly awards?
Unofficial,
The
official.
unofficial awards, yeah. And also just historically, all the title changes, great photos, in memoriam, and an expanded, awards list, right? There's some awards that are only a few years old now, right? I mean, independent wrestler,
And, Faction's
faction.
also new.
Yeah,
Yeah, Faction's the newest one. That was actually, like it was part of the PWI poll. We asked which award people would most like to see, and that was the highest, so that's what we went with.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but, I'm curious, you have the Mercedes cover there. It's worth
Yeah.
mentioning there's 4 covers of this
Yeah,
issue.
that is a really cool thing. I mean, I've gotten, into comics lately in the
Mhm.
last few months as my kid has gotten into them, so I've come to appreciate variant covers, and
Yeah.
so, very cool to see PWI have variant covers. Is there one official one, or are you just as likely to get one than the other?
I think the Mercedes cover would be the official in that it's also the UK cover. There's only one cover of the UK edition, and it is the main cover of the digital edition. I'm curious, Brian, did you get yours? What cover did you, get?
I got the Cody one.
Okay.
I'll
Yeah.
trade you.
I got the Tony Storm one, actually, but I don't have it here.
They're in here,
That
right
was the
here
one
they
that
are.
I got.
Yeah. I don't know how well this will turn out, but you could see them
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
there.
And Jason McVeigh actually just, sent me he got the Shotzi Blackheart one, so between the 4 of us, we got
We're
the
all
set.
covered.
Yeah, and all holding plaques. I mean, I think it's a real testament to, the work you do, Kevin, that you pulled that off. I mean, once
I
upon a
know.
time,
Think
that was
about it, the idea that and especially at the time he was, the idea that of the WWE champion holding the PWI Achievement Award for Wrestler of the Year on the cover of PWI, once an unthinkable
Yes.
visual.
is that
And
really
actually,
about Cody?
fun fact, Cody's holding the Match of the Year plaque on the cover.
Oh,
And
is
the
he?
reason he's holding the Match of the Year plaque is because he's holding the Wrestler of the Year plaque inside the magazine, and we kinda wanted to show off that he was both.
Right, and
Oh,
there's also a picture on the inside of Punk holding up the Feud of the Year, right? It's somewhere inside the magazine.
Yeah, yeah, but his, of course, Seth Rollins has been out injured. It was a little
Right.
harder to arrange something with him too. We got him his plaque, but getting
Yeah,
a photo was a little hard. That's the thing with some of these. Sometimes we get someone a plaque to someone, but we're not able to necessarily, like, get the photo or get it in time, and
right.
yeah, yeah. I'm always interested in sort of like what the awards, say about wrestling in any given year, it being sort of a snapshot, and I think, it speaks to a pretty healthy year for wrestling in that there's been some years in the last couple of years where it's been dominated by one company, and this year it's not. I mean, it's a pretty good mix. You've got, AEW winning a few awards, you got TNA winning an award,
2 awards,
that's
actually.
right, yeah. NXT actually kind of has an award in here. So, yeah, I mean, I think it speaks to a pretty health in terms of the response. Are you satisfied with, I meant it also says something about how wrestling's doing at any given time is the response you get in the way of votes?
Yeah, I would say the reader response was about as good as last year. It wasn't noticeably different on my end, and I'm the one counting most of the votes, so, um, but I think, like, as far as online response, I mean, I try to stay less in the weeds with that these days just for my own sanity,
Yeah.
but, it seems like people there wasn't too much pushback on too many of these. They were, like, relatively, I guess, safer choices. I think there are interesting things like Match of the Year got a lot of, like, it was Cody and Cena from, SummerSlam, to
Yeah.
very much not the WrestleMania match, but the SummerSlam match. And it's interesting how differently people look at these things because there's a Match of the Year poll that Voices of Wrestling does every year, and I took part in that. And I think the Cena Cody match was 81st out of the top 100 on theirs, which that's way too low. But I also think, I mean, it wasn't my match of the year either. So it's interesting how some of these things are subjective and the interpretation of them. So sometimes you'll get people in the same breath that one person is just viciously attacking, like saying this person has or people have no like business winning this category. Someone else will say, of course, who else would it be that would win this? So
What was the Observer Match of the Year?
that was, I believe it was the same as the Voices of Wrestling one. Kenny Omega Gabe Kidd, I
It
think,
was.
Yeah.
which was a very good match, and I had that when I voted for the Voices of Wrestling thing, I had that in my top 10. I mean, that was a great match.
Yeah, I think it speaks to our readership and the reality that I mean, as much as you could be mainstream in a wrestling magazine, that is the audience base, and
Mhm.
WWE and to some extent AEW is always going to have an advantage there. But that said, and look, I am primarily I don't think a surprise to anybody a WWE fan, and and was there in MetLife, and it was absolutely my favorite match of the year, Cena and Cody. Have has there Why don't we just begin with match of the year then,
Yeah, sure.
since we're talking about it. Has there ever been a match that has won, not that there was a worst match of the year, but has, one was one of the worst ever and, the other was the best of the year? I'm trying to think if there's everything,
That was
I
really, like, some whiplash with that for sure. I think this is not they were not neither of these were in contention, but it kinda reminds me of also from last year, they had that kinda stinker of a match between, Adam Copeland and Jon Moxley, and they had
yeah.
a much better match on TV a few weeks later, almost just seemingly to prove, like, "Listen, we're not this terrible. We can do better than this."
Yeah, and I think there's a history of that. You mentioned Adam Copeland. Remember Edge and Randy Orton with Edge's comeback match during the COVID WrestleMania,
That was rough,
which was
yeah.
a dog, and then they had the greatest match in the history of time since the dinosaurs. Remember that they promoted it, as such, and it wasn't, but it was really good. And I do think there's something to that, right? Like kind of that motivating factor to prove everyone wrong. Which is to say, I think if it wasn't for the dog of a match that they had at WrestleMania, which I thought was interesting. I don't know if you guys watched Unreal. They kind of acknowledged now that like they crapped the bed in that match. But they were super motivated to do something special at SummerSlam, and they pulled it off. And I think part of it also was that by August, John Cena kind of had his sea legs under him, right? Much more than earlier in the year.
Yeah,
But it's not everyone's cup of tea. I get people who find it kind of like corny, and it was very WWE. But I thought it really worked. I mean, the visual of Cena coming up from the bottom of the stage with Cody on his back.
yeah.
I mean, it's the most WWE thing in the world, but I also thought it was just terrific. Uh,
Bri
and and I
I
loved
know
it.
Brian was really fond of that match too, because you talked about it in the previous issue, I believe, your
Yeah.
be best of the year, and that was one of them.
I was saying that with that one, it like because it's not usually the kind of thing that I like where they do all of those false finishes and, like, there's all these, like, beautiful finishes that they waste, but I feel like the thing about that is I don't think you should never do it. I just think you shouldn't do it all the time, and in a
Yeah.
match like that, it seemed really appropriate, and it actually really, really worked for me. That wasn't my vote for match of the year. Actually, I liked, CM Punk versus Gunther. That was a match that I really, really loved, but actually, it would be up there. Tony Storm and Mariah May, it was very close for me, and again, another thing where I say, like, not necessarily my favorite thing in wrestling, but it works sometimes, and it worked in that match. Just
Mhm.
the crazy blood and the glass and all these kinds of things, like, they were able to pull it off. So that might have been, like, my number 2 pick, but the Cena and, and Rhodes match that won our awards, just in case anybody's wondering, it came in 11th on the Observer ones 'cause
Is that right? Wow.
I have it open now,
So
and it
not 81st on the,
no, it was 11th, so it was, like, the first one on the honorable mention list.
yeah.
But you know what's interesting is when I looked at that one, and I wasn't scanning it very closely, and I saw that worst match of the year was Cody versus Cena. At first, I thought they were talking about the SummerSlam match, and I'm like, "Are they nuts?" But then I realized it was the Mania one, and I'm like, "Yeah,
Sure.
that was actually the worst match of maybe the last couple of years."
Right.
I
Well
think
Level at that level.
well, I don't know, have you seen that Suzuki Butterbean match? That's still on my
Well, there's
looked at
that, and
watch
yeah.
list.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it,
that
it
was
is all relative because that match, the first Cody Cena match, um, were it not for the horrendous finish, and the Travis Scott interference and Rock no showing, I don't think it would have been good, but I don't think it was like incredibly bad. I think what made it so bad, one were the high standards, right? You're talking about the main event
Right.
of WrestleMania. Historically, Cena getting the 17th title, an important match. But I think it was really about leaving a bad taste in fans' mouth. And I was there in Vegas, and I
Yeah, same.
remember just leaving everybody being like, "Really? That's it? That's how we're closing the show?"
Mm.
Just disappointing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, it was the platform it was on, the level of importance. It might have been able to slip by if it wasn't that, and honestly, even all the stuff leading up to it was just not good. It just
Yeah.
felt like they were overthinking it. They were trying too much
Yeah.
to tell this big story, and they forgot that along the way, you actually have to still deliver a compelling match. It's not, you know what I mean? Like, that's part
Yes.
of telling the story.
Yeah. Yeah. But
And
I
I
think,
really that Cena heel run was always gonna be it was a challenge. Like, it was
I
really
apologize to everyone for that. I know
yeah, it's all your
yeah, it
fault.
is we're gonna blame you.
I know they
Yeah.
stole my idea, but I'm sorry.
What's
It's
crazy
interesting, and
is
I know we're not gonna have time to, like, go into the runners up on all the wow, just got really washed out here all of a sudden. So, like, um, we're not gonna have time to go into all the runners up, but, like, that Hollywood ending match was actually the first runner up.
first one, yep.
And that was pretty close to my match of the year. I like, personally, I'm a big Stardom guy. I thought that maybe the final match in the Saya Kamatani Tom Nakano feud with Tom's retirement, like, that was probably my match of the year, but it was close, and Storm Mariah May was very close to taking match of the year. That was really this was a category where it wasn't like one consensus favorite. It was like a matter of a few votes between the winner and the runners up here.
In terms of presentation and how much of a difference it can make in a match, and I've harped on this before, but I wonder if Mariah May and Toni Storm was put on last and it was the main event of Revolution,
Should have been.
whether that might have given it the edge. The first ever women's main event of an AEW pay-per-view, the dramatic finish, because I think there were like 2 matches after that, which was,
Yeah, which was
nuts.
absurd. I mean, it's still the match people remember from that
Yeah,
show more than any other, but I think you're right. If it had that history attached to it, because that's sort of what as it stands, it was kind of and supposedly the reasoning behind that was that Mariah May was on her way out, so, like, we're not gonna have her main event a pay-per-view. I think that's to me, that's kinda petty and
She
a little
lost, right?
defeatist. Right, she lost, right, so, like, okay, the person who's gonna go to their company lost on her way out, like, how's that making you look bad by her losing in the main event?
yeah,
It's just not it doesn't track, but,
yeah,
It also speaks to how important everything leading up to the match is, and it could
yes.
actually make the match better, because
Mhm,
the reason I loved that match is because everything in it was so earned. Like, the hatred they had, the desperation, the fact they would go to all those lengths.
mhm.
You believed in it because of everything that led up to it. And again, it was the inverse of Cody and Cena from WrestleMania,
yeah,
because you didn't believe in anything that led up to it. The
right.
match was even worse because of that.
It's and, the third runner up is the Page Moxley match from All In, and that's same same deal. A lot of it was the build up and the fans wanting to see Moxley's reign end, Hangman Page to get the belt back. But then, like, the second runner up is the triple threat, women's title match excuse me, women's world title match from, WrestleMania,
WrestleMania 19.
which I mean, there was a storyline build. I think a lot of that was just that it was a spectacular, like, athletic exhibition, you know?
Yeah,
I
and
wasn't
that's
super
always
crazy about that one, yeah.
I thought it was terrific, but I think to Kevin's point, I don't know if it was hurt by, but I do think, there wasn't it was a fine story, and they did tell it over several weeks, but I
Mhm,
remembered it's amazing how times change. At the time thinking Io doesn't belong in this match. In terms of, she wasn't the centerpiece figure. They put the title on her a week or 2 before Mania,
mhm.
which was a surprise when, Bianca and, Rhea were clearly the stars, but, uh I mean, boy, did Io prove everybody wrong. Now I think she's like the go-to, like, well, you gotta have Io in one of the world title matches at WrestleMania because she's stolen the show now 2 years in a row, at
Mhm.
Mania, so very much earned her place. Let's talk about wrestler of the year, the big one, as we mentioned before, Cody Rhodes takes it for the 2nd year in a row, right?
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yep, with 27%. I think, yeah, a fine pick. I mean, I don't think it was the year that 2024 was for Cody, and you might even argue 2023. And maybe it says something just about the trajectory of WWE, after climbing for a long time, at least kind of flattening out, if not starting to take a little bit, of a dip. But nevertheless, what did he lose? 1 match all year? I suppose that.
No, I think he lost a couple this time.
Well, he lost no, because the Drew match wasn't until January, right?
Oh,
I think
yeah, no,
otherwise
that's a fair point. I was
He
thinking that was
lost to
December.
Cena. That was it.
yeah, I think it was to Cena, and, yeah, I mean, I don't know well, I'll give you the runners up, are Mercedes Moné, Adam Page, and CM Punk, so all had strong years, so we could quibble, but, the fans gave it to Cody. Anybody
Voting
object?
wasn't even really particularly close in that one either. Like, the runners up were a little closer together, but Cody
Yeah.
was far and away voted
And
wrestler of the
even
year.
if whether you like him or not, like, you can't it's hard to call us out or argue with the fact that the guy who was the WWE champion, arguably, like, the top title in the whole business for most of the year would win that award. Like, that's not, like, exactly a shock, you know what I mean?
Yeah, the
No.
starting quarterback, and that's what they've been using a lot, and I like that as kind of a name for the top guy because it is the idea of like, well, here's who you're building around, and sometimes that guy is working and sometimes it's not, and it has been working for Cody. But we've talked about it a little bit, and maybe it is worth dipping in a little into current events here. Um, WrestleMania tickets discounted now. I don't know if you guys saw that, right? There's like buy 3, get 1 free,
Mhm.
lagging very much behind, last year's WrestleMania. At the same time, WWE is now, banning, sports bars and venues, in Vegas from showing WrestleMania, so people go and buy tickets, which I'm sure, city of Las Vegas is just thrilled about. I mean, that could really hurt their tourism business. But does it just say something about and I think we talked about this in a recent podcast, WWE just not being as hot as it was certainly a year ago, and even more than that if you go back a couple years to the height of the bloodline and finishing the story and all that. It does very much feel lukewarm. And what's more, I think pretty clearly Cody is not the top guy in WWE anymore in terms of his billing and fans' perception. Um, we now know CM Punk and Roman Reigns, the main event of WrestleMania. I fully expect that to close the show on night 2. And they've even sort of acknowledged in storyline that a world title match involving Drew McIntyre is, you know, a very much kind of a tier or a couple of tiers below the star power of Roman Reigns and CM Punk.
Which I don't know why you would do. I mean, there
Yeah.
was no need to do that. They could have built that match. I mean, he literally had the fans booing a match against Drew McIntyre. I mean, I don't know what the call for that is. It's just you're basically saying this is not as important. And even though it's not, why would you underline that on television to the fans? That was a baffling thing to do and totally unnecessary. But I agree. They are kind of coming down now, and the immense greed that they had is now reaping its bitter fruit for them as they find that people are less likely to buy tickets unless they have a damn good reason to at those prices. I mean, I saw even myself recently. There was the house show in Bridgeport. I looked at one time to try to go, and this is a house show. It was about 250 just to get in the door. And I'm like, there's no way I'm doing this. I checked
Insane.
again, but wait, there's a happy ending. I checked again a couple of months later, $75 for the same tickets. So I
Yeah.
went. But I mean, that speaks volumes to go from 250 to 75 for the same show. That's maybe we're returning to sanity somewhat with ticket prices again.
I
But
mean, WrestleMania tickets last year were the highest they'd ever been, and then we're on track to being higher this year. And I guess still technically are, but I don't know if they're still running the promotion. But when you're doing buy 3 get 1 free, I mean, you're discounting them by $25, so by 25%, I should say. So then they'd fall, I guess, below last year's ticket rates, at least if you're buying 4. And it does speak, I think, to just sort of like I think there's a bigger discussion here too about and this sort of harkens back somewhat to the conversation we had a few weeks ago about Mick Foley parting with WWE and him talking about WWE kind of being in bed with the Trump administration and MAGA and sort of casting it as this is the MAGA wrestling company. And I had mixed feelings about it. I still don't know for sure how fair that is, especially given they hate to take it so many different places, but, the fact that, like, Bad Bunny has become sort of the poster boy for, like, anti-MAGA, and he's, like, the WWE guy, and
Well,
I
we'll
half
we'll
wonder
see
if
though, Al.
that's
We'll see if they bring him back, then we'll know
I
whether
fully expect them to,
yeah.
and we're kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop for WrestleMania. What is the hook for WrestleMania this year? Because we haven't seen it. I'm starting to think it's Bad Bunny, and I don't know if it's if Bad Bunny is the masked man, which is possible. Is Bad Bunny in that box that's gonna be delivered to Elimination Chamber? But thinking in terms of like, well, okay, what is your hook? And the reality that Bad Bunny is even a bigger star than when he was last in WWE, it does feel like, you get to the level of like the Mike Tyson involvement, the Floyd Mayweather involvement, and maybe bigger than all of those, but like, and something very WWE going back to the Mr. T years, right? Where like, let's get the biggest pop star in the world and put him in a match, and I guess some of the rumors are that it's Logan Paul, and they've been teasing kind of a social media thing. So, there's that, but at the same time, again, sorry to take it to so many different places, you've got AEW um, whether it's deliberate or not, sort of starting to cast themselves as, like, the progressive wrestling, company with the anti-ice, a chance at least, and
That's the fans though, I mean, that's not
right. Well, it's also,
Mm.
Brody, right? It's also Brody
Yes.
King, and now the issue is how much does AEW and Tony Khan lean into it, and there's been some reports of maybe some hesitancy about doing that, but it's gotten them a lot of, publicity, a lot of media, and I'd say largely positive media. I mean, I think, like, I suppose it sort of depends where you stand politically, but I think overall it's been a pretty good look for them for, that their fans are on that side of the issue. And I do wonder, it's all to say, it feels like there's a little bit of an opening here for AEW at a time that there is kind of a growing resentment toward WWE about, maybe some of their political leanings. And Triple H showed up again on Fox News recently defending the reverse food pyramid or whatever that RFK is putting out there. So it does feel like as WWE is moving closer and closer further to the right in some ways, AEW, at least there's an opportunity there for them to say like, well, we're the alternative. So anyway, Kevin, any thoughts on that?
So I mean, there was a CNN article about this, which, by the way, was the first public acknowledgement that WBD has a minority
Right?
stake ownership
Yes.
in AEW, which had to be disclosed because CNN is also owned by WBD. Um, less than 10% stake, to be clear. So, in that article, they spoke to a former wrestling fan who, for various reasons, tuned out over the years. But one of the things that kind of left a bad taste in his mouth is I just certain things about the product that he found not to be, well, in good taste, like the WWE product, the mainstream wrestling product. And then one thing that, and this is like a progressive wrestling fan, one thing that he likes about AEW is that they are a little bit more permissive and let people make political statements and appear, kind of share that part of themselves. Whereas WWE is a little more like, okay, maybe don't be so outspoken about your political beliefs because we don't want one side or the other to get upset. And then of course, they go and like will do other things that like so clearly place the company on the conservative side of the aisle. But AEW, I think to some degree out of the gate tried to position itself as a more progressive uh, wrestling company, just in terms of the talent they hired, and in terms of the way they presented things. it's a little bit of a dangerous game for them to completely play that, not just in terms of like potentially alienating fans, because again, you can bring in the fans that you want. You can cater to your audience, which is what they try to do on the wrestling side of things. But I think where some of the danger is, AEW doesn't have a squeaky clean record either. They've
Right.
had talents with various kinds of allegations after levied against them. There was a scandal recently with Hangman Page, kind of like publicly doubling down on his friendship with Marty Scurll after things that Marty Scurll was accused of doing years ago that were, you know, just during the speaking out, just sexual misconduct allegations. It was, and then Adam Page, who's kind of seen as this like progressive guy, had to address his merely being friends with Marty Scurll and being seen with him publicly, and that didn't look good for Page. So I think when you do say, "Hey, we're like the like quote unquote woke wrestling company," you're opening yourself up to like you got to be consistent, and
Yeah.
you want to, maybe you don't book this person, or maybe you don't allow this to be said, maybe like you have to be mindful of what some of your wrestlers are tweeting in a different kind of way. So I think maybe AEW's best strategy here is to be permissive and allow people to do what they're going to do within reason. You know, as an example, so Bryce Remsburg more or less said, without saying it, that he didn't ring the bell as the anti-ice chants were happening so that they could continue to air on television. Um,
Yeah.
but
Like
like he didn't
all
technically say I'm anti-ice, which of course he is. Like that's why he did it. And like knowing enough about Bryce as a person, following along with his career and his social media over the years, like he's a very like progressive minded guy, and that is his stance, and I mean, so, like, I'll say it here too. ICE is doing a lot of terrible things. I'm very like critical of that in my personal life of that organization right now. Um, is it going to be covered in the magazine? Probably not. Like, but it's also possible that some of this, if it becomes such a part of the programming, then like if the fans make it part of the show, you have to acknowledge it at a point.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I think the tricky thing is that, and this goes on both sides, is there is or there are the political leanings of your roster, and they're gonna be all over the place when you've got,
sure,
I mean, you've got WWE
they've got
on the
700 guys on the
sure,
roster.
yeah. I mean, you got CM Punk and Logan Paul on, in WWE, and I think it's fair to say they're, uh, not necessarily on the same page, politically, and
Yeah.
the same over in AEW. So I think it does get to, like, well, what is sort of like the broader vision, for the company, and it really is, gets to sort of like management level, executive level, and the reality is that in both of those, you're talking about incredibly wealthy, business people, who I imagine on both sides would prefer not to be on the bad side of the administration, right? As you mentioned, especially, with them now WBD having an ownership stake, and the FCC getting to sign off on, a lot of these, mergers. So I don't think either, at least some people in both probably would be reluctant to do anything that would be, taken as an a kind of overt, criticism, or something of the Trump administration. But I do wonder if there is something to branding, right? And, yeah, I had Tony Khan has, I think, tried to, I don't know, play both sides, but at least not weigh in too much. But I've half wondered whether it's worth putting out a statement saying, yeah, this is the company where any fan is welcome, and they should feel, safe coming to our shows, and welcome and accepted, and all of that. Um, knowing that WWE might be reluctant to say the same, but again, they've got
And
the Bad
which
Bunny
they
card.
say at their shows. There's a statement at the beginning of the show that like we have zero tolerance of discrimination against anyone based on race, gender, sexuality, religion, national creed. Like there's that thing, and like you can be ejected from the show if you do this, but that's not like a public facing thing. Like
Yeah,
it's not. They don't put that. They don't at the beginning of the TV broadcast. They don't have it on. I don't think it's anywhere on their website.
yeah.
But they could. That's like an easy thing. They could. That sort of seems like a layup, and it's not like an overtly, Like, that's to me, this is the way I look at it even with the magazine, and again, my political, leanings are, like, pretty clear to anyone who's paying attention to me, who follows me on social media, then reads my non-wrestling posts, but, like, um, my take on it as it relates to the magazine, like, sorry, but, like, being supportive of someone for who they are, sorry, not sorry, but being supportive of someone based on who they are and allowing them to be themselves and to feel safe and all this, that's not a partisan political stance, and if it is, well, that might be a problem with your party if that's the case.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
not sorry.
Yeah, and I think as far as I mean, there's certain things that are out of their control, I really think for the foreseeable future, there's not gonna be a time that Brody King comes out there that chant is not gonna break out.
Totally.
I don't care where they go. The AEW fan base is the AEW fan base, and I think whether they like it or not, they're at least stuck with that.
It was being
And
chanted in Australia. I mean, like,
Yeah.
Australia, right? Especially now that it's gotten so much coverage. It was on the John Oliver, that's his name, right? On that, and he
last
was
week tonight.
hilarious
Right.
because he had a screenshot of MJF's reaction, which was hilarious. But what was cool about that in a way, and this also I noticed in that, is that in the past, when shows like that would do these segments where something that had happened in the world of pro wrestling, they either wouldn't make mention of the specifics of who these people were because they assumed their audience wouldn't know, or they would go out of their way to explain who they were and where they were. But John Oliver just said AEW and
Yeah.
MJF, like everyone would know who they were. Like he didn't say a professional wrestling show. He said an AEW show. And he said, look at the expression on MJF's face. I mean, that doesn't, that's pretty cool. That shows a level of cultural awareness that, has got to be nice for AEW to have, whether they think this is good publicity or not.
Well, also John Oliver is on HBO, right? Which
I
is,
know, but
yeah.
still.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's absolutely a good thing, and that's where, like, synergy, comes in handy, so, I agree. Do you think, and they have to some extent already, but, given the mainstream attention, do you go all in on Brody King? Who's a terrific talent anyway, right? I mean, it's not the craziest thing in the world, to go all in on the guy, but in as much as, like, yeah, he's got something right now.
I was sort of thinking that he might win it in the
Yeah,
wake of all that he might win the title. But one thing that I find, which is ironic now in this post Vince era, is I sometimes feel like AEW more than WWE is the company that seems to really be unwilling to kind of like bend on booking based on these kind of to pivot in these ways.
yeah.
It's like what happened with Harley Cameron and Mercedes Moné. Like that felt like, oh, something's happening here. Wow. So you could just feel it like they should, especially in front of the where they were going in front of the crowd. Like this is you could really do something special here. But instead, it was very much like, nope, that wasn't our plan. We're going to stick with our plan. And I'm not saying they're as bad as WWE was in the Vince era with that, but you know, yeah, I mean, I don't think it would have been the worst idea in the world to give it a try and see what happens. Give it a shot, you know?
Yeah, we'll see where he is a year from now. All right, it's back to these awards. Why don't we talk about a woman of the year? And she is on the cover, Mercedes Moné. I think, fair to say a slam dunk this year. First runner up, Tony Storm. Second, Stephanie Bakir, and third, Io Sky. But Mercedes kind of ran away with it with 28% of the vote. A terrific year for her. We had this conversation a few weeks ago, and I asked at the time, has Mercedes surpassed Sasha Banks yet? And at the time, I wasn't sure. I'd say now, the even a few months removed from that, I think the answer, I don't know if it's a clear yes, but I'd be leaning more toward yes. How about you, Kevin?
So I think it's difficult because in some ways, I mean, AEW does not have the visibility
Yeah,
of WWE, and she was still a pretty big star in WWE. She main evented WrestleMania the one year. Um, albeit night one, and people debate whether that's really the main event, but it was a significant main event match, even if it wasn't the final one of the weekend. Um, so I think in some ways it's always kind of it's a visibility thing, but I think in terms of her in ring legacy, Yeah, I mean, I think she's done more, even though most of these titles were not recognized world titles, the exception being the CMLL women's title, which is, you know, lower profile, certainly in the US. And even in Mexico, was more of an undercard thing until more recently. But, if you look at her in terms of what she's accomplished and then how she will be seen by future generations, like, yeah, she's really just kind of legitimized herself in a major way, in the same way that, like a John Moxley has. Um, we'll see where she goes from here, because she's kind of started that like losing streak at
Yeah.
this point, which is funny that that coincides with her winning Women of the Year and being number 1 in the women's 250. That's when she starts losing all the titles, because it was just funny how that worked out. But, um, I think ultimately at the other end of this, she's gonna be back in the mix for the world title and probably have a run of significance there. So I think certainly she made the right choice in her career and her life, because
We cursed.
we cursed her?
Yeah, we by putting her over like that, we
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. That's
Yeah.
yeah, I think so. But no, I mean, she, has had more freedom to kinda be and do what she wants since she left. She's able to, like, do more with her devote more time to her creative projects, because AEW has a lighter schedule. Um, and she's been able to build her legacy and go in places and do things and wrestle in Japan against Japanese wrestlers and in Mexico against luchadoras. And she's been able to kind of make her career into something that she wants and not be like subject to the whims of, like, even if Tony Khan decided he'd do, like, oh, okay, we don't have much for you right now, she can go and do all these other things.
Yeah.
And she kind of has her life back. So I think for her, she made a great choice. And you know, back to your original question, I think in a lot of ways she has surpassed at least like the in-ring legacy of Sasha Banks.
Yeah, not that, this needs to be the be all end all or the final destination, but I do think it's the case that if she ever did return to WWE, she'd return as a much bigger deal than she was, when she
Absolutely.
left, kind of like the Cody Rhodes sort of, situation, where you come back kind of like the conquering, champion, and I think it's in
Mm.
part because of what she's done over the last couple years. That said, I do I mean, she hasn't won the world title yet, so there's that, but I do wonder, what if the ceiling, she's rapidly approaching the ceiling in AEW in terms of what she can be and what she can mean to that company, unless they go all in, and maybe they'd say that they have already. Um, I'd say they're still a little shy, but really building the company around her, not to where maybe, she gets a pay-per-view main event, but where the assumption is that every pay-per-view main event is Mercedes because she's the biggest star, in the company. One little thing, this is another thing that sort of made me think like, wow, so again, reading comics these days, AEW just put out or DC just put out a comic book, an AEW branded comic book that they've been teasing for a while, which is sort of a team up between AEW stars and DC stars, and it's not the greatest book, but it's pretty cool. I mean, Willow
That's a
Nightingale.
really big deal
Oh,
culturally.
Willow
Yeah.
Nightingale, who grew up not far, from me, here, is teamed up with Wonder Woman. I mean, how cool is that? Like, and Wonder Woman, like, puts her over, like, "Oh, she's got the same stuff that I do," that kind of thing. But anyway, the climactic sort of, a moment of the whole thing is Sasha Banks. Oh, I'm sorry, Mercedes
Oh, maybe
Moné.
he answered your question there, Al.
Even years later, I mean, it's hard for me to get used to. But like she is, I don't know if comic book spoilers or anything, but it does culminate with her kind of as the big centerpiece villain, and teamed up with a big DC villain. So it does tell me that, like, yeah, even among because what that comic book is sort of a vehicle to get AW over, and clearly they see it like, well, this is our biggest star. I don't know if that always translates into the honor product. And again, I wonder if and I do feel like sort of they should. I mean, at least give it a try, going all in on her, where she really is the centerpiece.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think that's a pretty good idea in terms of, like, what, you know, the recognition she has, and she's still, like, The Mandalorian's a big thing, and
Yeah,
people know, like, I know people who don't follow wrestling, and are like, "Oh, Casca Reeves." I'm like, "Yeah. No, I know her."
sure. Yeah.
Um, and maybe in some cases they heard she's a wrestler, or maybe not, but, um, she it's pun intended, she has that bankability. And like you said, like, after you do this, like, ultimate belt collector storyline, like, where else do you go but, like, a very high level world title reign? And I think that division is sort of Tekla is great, but I think she's a transitional champion, and, in terms of whether it goes back to Chris Statlander or it goes to Willow or someone else, there's very much room to have Mercedes reascend into the mix there.
Yeah.
Um, and I think there's big money in a Mercedes Willow pay-per-view match if they build it properly for the world title. In that case, I kind of think you have Willow challenging
Yeah.
Mercedes.
Yeah. A lot of
Um,
history there between those 2.
yes, yes. So, but there's a lot of different ways you can go with it. But just
Yeah.
I think they would have to, yeah, really commit, add more TV time, main event, not just TV shows, but a pay-per-view, maybe multiple pay-per-views. It shouldn't be that hard to do it at this point. It really shouldn't. They've had all sorts of stuff, main event pay-per-views. They've had tag matches. They've had everything but a women's match,
Yeah.
main event pay-per-view.
And
And that
isn't it
whole one of 3 main events thing does not count.
so I think what's really weird about her and how they're handling her though is even after all this time, with all the titles that she's been winning, they keep her away from the big one, from the AEW world title. And it feels to me, I agree with Al, like the whole thing should be built around her at this point. And I almost feel like everything that's going on lately with the world title, with Statlander and Tekla and everything, that should be the TBS title. And you know what
Yeah.
I mean? And Mercedes should be the one with the world title. I feel like it should be reversed.
Yeah, it definitely seems to be sort of deliberate keeping her away because on one hand, they rightfully, promote her as about the biggest star in the company and one of the biggest stars in the world, and yet they're sort of at the same time delivering this message that she's not quite good enough to be our world champion because she's had a shot at it and didn't get it. But clearly, she's leagues, above the people who are competing for it. So, yeah, kind of mixed messages.
Yeah, I think so.
Um, let's jump into, we'll take 'em, well, first, feud of the year, and again, in as much as, I think sometimes these things give you a snapshot of how a year went, I was kind of underwhelmed by just about everything here. Feud of the year went to CM Punk and, Seth Rollins, and when I saw that, I was like, "Really?" I don't know that I could even remember that many big matches between them. I know they kicked off the year with the cage match, and then they had the three-way, at SummerSlam. Was there a match after that? I don't even remember.
So um they had 3 matches total well, no, they also had the tag. So it did go through a number of months because it was the Netflix match, they had, the cage match on Raw in March. I was working on an article
Oh, right,
recently
those are
that
2
ties a
different
lot of this
matches, right.
together. The Mania match, and then they wrestled again, and, Rollins took the belt from him at SummerSlam, so, I mean, sort of a match.
Yeah,
So 3 singles and 1 triple threat, and then at WrestlePalooza, there was the mixed tag with, the respective spouses. Um,
right. Yeah,
Maybe also part of why this one resonates is that the seeds were sown for this way back in 2023 when
yeah,
Punk came back. They, like, they were feuding into early 2024, and then both of them were, like, kind of battling injuries over the course of the year. They weren't healthy at the same time. By the time they were both healthy, they'd already started Rollins, feuding with the Bloodline with Cody. So it, like, took, the better part of 2 years for everything to finally line up for this feud to start, which I think made it have a greater impact with a lot of people. And yeah, again, just like longevity, because a lot of feuds are over in a couple of months. And I mean,
yeah, yeah. I think part of it for me is that Punk has been in such, a great personal feuds in recent years, whether it was, Drew McIntyre or MJF in AEW. that this one, to me
Also, both
feels
match feud of the year winners.
yeah,
So
yeah, this feels like a kind of a notch below those, but it was fine. And then, first runner up is, Mariah May and Toni Storm, who also got first runner up for match of the year. Then am I looking at these right? Yes, and then, Adam Page and Moxley, and NXT versus TNA. I don't know about that one, but nevertheless, and any thoughts on that, Brian?
Well, I guess the NXT versus TNA thing, the big thing that has going for it is it was kind of unprecedented. I mean, it's kind of a big deal to have this. WWE never really used to do things like that. Another company, like for real, another company, feuding with their guys and everything. So, I mean, I could see how that would. I wouldn't pick it for feud of the year, but I could see how it would definitely get some votes. But I agree with you. The Punk and Rollins thing. It almost feels like I don't disagree with it winning, but I think that's just because there was, a lack of anything that I could think of
Yeah, I don't know that I can
over
tell
it.
you
It's
one
almost
that
like
was
a
better. Yeah.
default,
Yeah.
like winning by default.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, I agree. Yeah, I couldn't tell you anything that deserved it more than that, but yeah, I think it just speaks to, maybe a little and that some of that is booking, some of that is the delivery of promos for wrestlers, and it's really angles. I think that they've been trying to make Cody and Drew that that super personal feud, and, to me, it's coming up a little bit short, and it's a little bit by the numbers, and sort of for the same reasons that I brought up with this one. I've seen Drew in better personal feuds, and I've seen Cody in better personal feuds, and this feels like a little bit sort of like, microwave the leftovers, and we talked about this in the last one, but Drew setting the picture of Dusty on fire and all that, and Cody invading his house. It's just a little bit meh.
by the way, while I was editing, the last episode, it was the last episode of the podcast, right? I was editing it. I legit cracked up at Brian's son just correctly identifying that they could just print out and then just a copy of the photo.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. Is that the only one he's got?
Go to the Walgreens. They'll run up off a bunch for you.
Uh,
Let's talk about together most popular and most hated wrestlers of the year, which I think kind of like with feud of the year, I think speaks. They're sort of booking awards, right? I mean, wrestling companies, you know, try to put somebody out there as their top villain and top babyface, and it's a matter of how fans react. Um, and again, I don't think in certainly with hated wrestler of the year, I think it is a notch below where we've been in recent years. Logan Paul wins it. Very much feels like a default because I think he's a fine heel. I think he's a very good heel. But coming off of the great work that Dominic has done the last few years, and Dominic drops to number one, first runner up. And then you got Don Callis and John Moxley, and I'm just sort of underwhelmed by this whole bunch,
Hmm.
it especially, and I think part of it is we've had such great heels in recent years, in terms of, the work that MJF was doing years ago and Roman at the kind of height of, the bloodline, that this feels a little bit, again, a notch below that.
by the way, I've spoken to MJF about some of this stuff. He is pissed that he's not in the running for this,
Oh, really?
and he's coming back for it. He's told me personally because this is like he looks at like some of these guys as like they don't really care about being the most hated. They just want to be, seen as cool and also technically bad guys. And
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
disagree with some of this.
yeah.
I think Dominic is pretty committed to the bit of being hated, but the thing is just like his alleged father Eddie Guerrero, people just like him in his role
He
too much, and
started
then they end up
he
cheering.
started getting cheered, yeah, I was there
Yeah,
in Mania when the place just fell in love with the guy.
And
yeah.
I don't think Logan Paul is uncomfortable with being hated either.
Yeah.
He embraces that
Oh no,
too.
and I think I suspect a few of these votes were less him as the performer, more him as the
That's
person. To be
interesting.
honest.
Yeah. Yeah, I think my issue with Logan winning it is where he was positioned. And if he was the top guy throughout the year and the top heel, but he really was kind of a upper mid-card part-timer,
Mhm.
so we'll see. I mean, I think this year he has said that he's really committed to this being sort of his full-time job. And, if they do go the Logan Paul Bad Bunny route, in terms of a key match, real featured match, then certainly he'll have the spotlight to really do some great heel work. I think he's great at it. I think he's really good. There's one video that was in social where what was it? A fan was, holding up a sign that said, "Logan takes bubble baths," or something like that, and his reaction is just great, just old school, like, I do not," and then, Bronson Reed tells him, like, "What's wrong with the bubble bath?" And he's like, "Yeah, and what if I did what if I did take bubble baths?" Which was good that he's got, those kind of instincts for a guy who is still, relatively new to all this.
Yeah.
I think that, his instincts on all this stuff is just spot on. I mean, I
Well, the
think he's
funny
very,
thing
very
is when you say I know this is a little off the beaten path, but if we're looking at a potential Logan Paul versus Bad Bunny, let's say WrestleMania match, on the surface, that might be a nightmare because you think like, well, those 2 guys, like, who's gonna excuse me, who's gonna carry the match? Who's gonna call it? But I think honestly, I think Logan Paul is at the point now
sure.
where he probably could. He
Oh,
probably
yeah.
could get Bad Bunny through a match like that. I really think he
I
could.
I think that's a real test because the way I look at a lot of the celebrity involvement in WWE, because like Bad Bunny came across very well in his matches
Yeah.
as well.
But that was
Um,
highly rehearsed and of course, you know what I mean,
And this
that's
could
practiced.
the
be
thing, and
too.
that's
Yeah.
also true with Logan Paul's matches.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
increasingly less so now because he's wrestling more often, but like he had months to rehearse many of these, and and to his credit, they came across great. But I compare it to Dancing with the Stars
Mhm.
because like someone can go out and they can have this amazing professional dance performance, but ultimately they are working alongside someone who has been at this for years, who has the
Yeah.
instincts for it, and they are choreographing everything. And then, that's so naturally with WWE's resources, with the people they have, and sometimes it's not even just people employed by WWE. Sometimes it's they'll have like indie wrestlers help with it. They'll like they'll bring out the big guns for it. Um, and it will look great, but it's a little bit more of a test as you're doing this regularly, and people can begin to see the holes in your game. I think Logan has adapted to his credit very well. To that and withstood those like because again, anybody can look good in one match with enough training if they have some level of instinct, some level of athleticism.
Yeah.
But I think it would be a real test for him to be in a one-on-one match with another Dancing with the Stars contestant, so to speak.
I think another revelation of Unreal, has been how scripted these matches,
Oh my
are,
god,
and
yeah.
and we always knew they were, but it's fascinating seeing the producers in the back saying, "Well, here comes the power bomb, and here comes this," and it really is mapped out, move by move, in a way that I think at least once upon a time, and it maybe depends on the wrestler, it wasn't always, but it does feel and when something is off by one thing, like, "Oh, he was supposed to do that there, and he didn't do it." As you said, I think when you're working with celebrities, like, Jelly Roll and that kind of thing, they spend a lot of time showing, the preparation for Jelly Roll SummerSlam match.
Mhm.
It's weeks, if not months of, rehearsing and planning,
Mhm.
move by move, and if it works, it works, so
I
no quibbling there.
I wanna say Shawn Michaels, and this may have not just been like a Logan Paul, it may have been just for NXT wrestlers in general, like the newer, who don't have the indie experience or past
Yeah.
wrestling experience. Something to the effect of, like, you're showing them how to have, like, a thrilling, high spots filled classic match first, and then you're showing them
Yeah.
the fundamentals, which is so backwards.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's what they're up against if they want to be able to use people who are not wrestlers in these big shows.
I
Y
really
y
wanted to cry. There was one of the LFGs where The Undertaker of all people, The Undertaker, the epitome of the veteran and the old school this and that. He's
Once
standing
knife
there.
fights in the locker room.
Yes, he's standing there and he's instructing these 2, like, LFG recruits on the finer points of how to get a yay and boo chant going.
Oof.
And I just wanted to cry at that point because 'cause I'm like, yeah, I mean, shouldn't there be a lot of other things they need to know first before from you, especially before this? I mean, I just wanted that's why I still haven't watched a minute of Unreal. I can't do it. I can't do it.
Yeah, yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, it's certainly entertaining and it is, unreal to be watching this and think like, "My god, they're lifting the curtain this much," and understanding that a lot of it is, even the show about exposing how much of a work wrestling is is in and of itself a work. But it's
Well,
entertaining viewing
And it's
nevertheless.
on
popped
that
up in Geek
front,
Count a couple times, Al. You've talked about like your kind of love-hate relationship with this show.
Yeah.
well,
It's always
one thing that
fascinating
made it
reading for
through to
me.
me from that show, which I don't know if we wanna touch on, but because it's been a story, is the thing with what Michael Hayes said about Chelsea Green
Yes.
on there.
Yeah.
That was, because I have some thoughts about that. I mean, can we
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think it's definitely worth talking about it. And real quick, I mean, what he said and kind of became a story was he sort of said that like her role is not to be a top person. She is essentially a mid carder there to make other people look good, and kind of establishing that like she has got a ceiling, and she hit it, and suggesting that the notion of her kind of breaking through to that next level where she is a world champion or a world title contender is kind of off the table. And understandably for a Chelsea Green who's dreamed of doing this her whole life, it's hard to hear to say that you're good for this, but not more than this. And I don't think it was meant as a put down in Michael Hayes' defense. I think what he's saying is what you do and the role you play is super valuable, but it is this role. And you know, and I do think there is a reality that there are people like that, right? Jake the Snake Roberts, right, in WWE played a really important role. I don't know that he ever could have or would have been world champion, but what he did, he was perfect at. So I do think it is meant as a compliment, but I understand why it's kind of hard to hear.
Well, I think that this is the problem with a show like that because, I kind of agree with you in the sense that, I don't think there's anything wrong with the company looking at a talented wrestler that way necessarily. I think that is a perfectly legit and valid spot for someone to be in. I mean, you need people in those spots. Historically, like you said, Al, there have always been people in those spots. The problem is, do we need a television show
Mm,
where one of the top creative guys says that to the public, to the fans?
yeah.
Because could you imagine if you had a show back then and you had, Jerry Briscoe out there going like, well, Mr. Perfect's very good talent. We like him a lot. His job is, not to be the world champion. It's to sort of be the guy that makes everybody else look good. I mean, like that would be why would you tell the fans that? Because
Yeah.
then you're telling the fans this is the only way to see Chelsea Green. Even if that is her spot, and I don't think there's anything wrong with having someone in that spot to come out and say it. And I would be curious to know if I could sit down with Chelsea Green what her because she's very smart and she has to understand that she is playing that role, and I wonder if her issue isn't so much that that is her role, but that the company would stamp her in that way to the fans and to the general public. That's what I have the problem with.
It just makes no sense. I mean, like even if you go back to a version of this with Brian Danielson as the B plus player,
But that was an
Triple
angle,
H,
you know what I mean?
it was an angle, but it was
Based
also
on
like
reality.
it was reality, and
Yeah.
they really weren't going to push him that much at that
Right.
point. So it was kind of like saying, like, yes, it was an angle, but also like it was a work shoot because it was like you're not going to be above this place on the card for a while.
But the difference with Kevin, like what I meant was when they started really acknowledging it on TV
Yeah.
and saying that to the fans, at that point, it was because it was a money angle for WrestleMania. Whereas with Chelsea, it feels like they're not going to do anything with that. That's just them speaking honestly about her on television now.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I'm admittedly like some of the timing on this. I know at a point they were saying stuff like that and didn't necessarily have the plans in place to push
Right.
him because they can say all they want that the whole time the plan was to have Brian Danielson main event WrestleMania
I
and
don't think it was.
WrestleMania 30. No, it was not. No, it was not. No, it was not. Anybody out there who believes that is revisionist history. That was not their plan. They brought Batista back. They had Batista Orton as their plan. Like it was all done that way for a reason. And it was not to have Danielson kind of last minute come in. Their hand was forced. Credit to them for adjusting, but I just that's a hot button issue for me. But like all these years later, but to your point, Brian, like Chelsea that does not serve her well. It doesn't
No.
make her look credible in her role even. Like, it's kinda self-defeating because it's like, if you know she's out there and she's going to be wrestling a Charlotte Flair, or I forget the maybe, I forget who the other example, he's used was, but, like, you're not going to expect her to win. Like, you're so, like, really, how invested are you gonna get in that match if there's no
And then she
chance to just
loses value if that's the case. You know,
that's
she
Yeah.
100%.
Well,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, the one plus side maybe is that, and not that she needs extra motivation, but does she kind of try to take this and say, "Well, I'll show you," and really turn up
She
her
could.
game and break? Because I don't think it's crazy to for Chelsea to be in that world title picture as a heel cowardly champ, kind of the Miz role, back in the day. And I think she's
Mhm.
even said that that's what she aspires to be, is sort of like the female Miz, which is a super valuable role. And I think she could do it. I think she could be,
Yeah.
the heel that cheats to win and
The
holds
beatable
on to that
champion.
title for much longer than you'd expect. I might be a valuable role. I don't know that they've got super strong heels on the women's side. So, um, yeah, I mean, she could be the heel. She could be, in that most hated conversation
And
in a
we're
year or
we're
two.
saying too just what a, like, hard worker she is, and,
She's
like,
great.
how
Yeah.
much she gets it, and, like, how much she hustles, and she was on the cover of our magazine, and how well she did with marketing that, but also, like, not just helping us market it, but, like, showing, like, "Hey, look at what a big deal I am. I am on the cover of this magazine that's been around since before
Yeah.
I was born, and, and the reason I'm on there is why wouldn't they want me to be on the cover of it?" And
What's funny too that it comes off as unreal is this and it speaks to, like, how wacky wrestling is. This person who's this loathsome heel, you see her on Unreal, she's the most likable person,
oh, she's
she's,
great.
yeah, I mean, a really, like, you
yeah.
leave that watching, just really rooting for her because she just seems like such a decent person.
So maybe
Um,
maybe in a few years it'll be revisionist and it'll be, "Oh, it was always our plan."
yeah, maybe.
Right. That
Most
really
popular
lit a fire under Chelsea to
Yeah.
prove something.
Yep. Yep.
Most popular wrestler of the year goes to Tony Storm, very much a main event women's star. I got no huge problem with this. I got to say, I mean, and this is a category where there is recency bias, and it's fine because the question is, when you're voting as reader, like, who is your favorite wrestler, essentially, who's the most popular wrestler. So it kind of doesn't matter what somebody did earlier in the year. It is right now. And I say that because I would have thought Jey Uso had this in the bag early in the year, right? I
Mhm.
mean, I think we forget, but you go back to January, February, how over Jey Uso was.
That
Uh,
Netflix premiere, oh my god, yeah.
yeah, yeah, and I do think, like, if he did voting in February or something, he would have run away with it. As it is, he got 3rd runner up, which is, that's not nothing. Cody Rhodes, 1st runner up, and John Cena, 2nd runner up. Fascinating because John Cena, again, spent much of the year as a heel. But Tony Storm, what do we think of her as the most popular wrestler of the year? Again, there is a pattern here of, like, the women really, like, killing it in AEW, and maybe not getting the stage that they deserve, giving how much they're contributing.
Yeah, because I mean, even if, like, I'm looking down, like, because I have some of the, like, these the honorable mentions, like, in order in front of me, and it's, like, it is a big drop down the list before the next name appears, with, Hangman Page being the next one, but, like, it's a gulf in terms of votes that the 2 of them got. And Tony Storm, worth noting too, 2nd ever woman to win this category. The only other is Becky Lynch back
Mhm.
during her run as the Man, which was just, like, she was the biggest star in the business at that
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
So,
And the thing about Tony Storm, I mean, again, it's a tough winner to quibble with. Like I said
yeah.
about the Cody Wrestler of the Year, because it's obvious, again, whether you like Tony Storm or not, whether you like her persona, I happen to love all of it. You
Mm.
can't argue with the fact that she's enormously popular. Not only is she enormously popular, there doesn't feel like any significant fan backlash where you feel like there's a segment of the fans that don't like her. And you could even say that about Cody, that there is. But with her, no. I mean, if there is, it's so insignificant. I mean,
Yeah.
even if you could say, well, I don't know if she's the most popular in wrestling. There's no denying she's the most popular in AEW. I mean, I can't think of anybody who has that level of absolute full adoration. I mean, not even Hangman Adam Page, I don't
No.
think does. It's
Yeah.
like where everyone's on board to the point where I think, well, I don't know if I could speak for everybody. Like, I get very sensitive about when I don't feel like they're handling her the right way because I think, like, for example, what they're doing with Orange Cassidy and her right now, even though I find it very entertaining, I worry that it's going to make her seem like less of a big deal. Like, I don't know, but that only speaks to how over she is, I think.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'm gonna breeze through the rest of these because bringing up Bryan Danielson made me think we should probably talk about the Weston Awards. For faction of the year, we've got the Don Callis family. Again, I don't think the strongest year for factions. Tag team of the year. Speaking of not a super strong year, the Hardys win it off of their
Who had a
top
great year,
record.
but tag teams did not
Sure.
necessarily.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, you
right,
look
yeah,
at
yeah.
I can't name a team that I would give it to over them. I
no,
honestly can't.
absolutely. Yeah. We have got. Let's see.
There's another TNA winner and inspirational, Mike Santana.
Inspiration, Mike Santana wins it. A great photo and photo shoot. There's a video of, putting that together, right? That
Yeah,
they
yeah,
shared with
RJ
us?
Adams. It's on our YouTube, on our
Yeah, and honestly,
Facebook
that
page.
was one that I was really, pushing for, and I think well deserved. John Cena wins comeback of the year. Kind of forgot about that one. I think that's fine. I mean, given, WWE really was the John Cena show in 2025. Harley Cameron wins most improved wrestler, of the year. I think
She's
that's
put a lot of work. Yeah, she's really, and she's a, like, very fleshed out
yeah.
performer. Like, has like, stands out as a character in a company that doesn't necessarily have as many like large personas.
For what's worth, one name I was expecting to see on Most Improved that did she even get a runner-up? No. Maxine Dupree. I think Maxine Dupree has done some good work, lately. I mean, it's all relative, but
Sure. Yeah.
I've seen a lot of, like, hustle in her, and I think she's been one of kind of the feel-good stories. Kendall Gray went Rookie of the Year. For folks who don't know that much about her, what you could tell us about, Kendall Gray, Kevin?
I mean, that's really a great choice. She just is, she gets it. She is a next in line signee, but she grew up watching wrestling. So it's sort of like a perfect, like, she wanted to be a wrestler. She just, her route did not include the indies. That's, look, it's perfect because she gets it. She knows the history, and is just like an incredible athlete, in-ring performer, has an amateur background that I think she was like 64-1, or maybe was she might have even been undefeated in college.
Wow.
And is just Evolve Women's Champion. Just very well deserving. Seems very grateful for the honor. Third year in a row that an NXT woman won it. And I would just mention briefly that it was actually like, and this is where AI messes things up. I remember seeing on the trending topics that Kendall Gray ran away with that award or something like that. And no, Grok, she did not. It was actually a very close race because the Texas Outlaws, the nephews of Cody and Dustin Rhodes, Wyatt and Wayne Rhodes, were like pretty close runners up in that category.
Didn't, Bad Bunny get, like, a runner-up years
He
ago?
did, yeah. He's the first. He's the first runner up from the PWI Awards to headline a Super Bowl halftime.
But not the last, I'm sure. Um,
I'm sure not.
and, independent wrestler of the year goes to, Shotzi Blackheart. We were talking a little bit about this, offline. This is always kind of a tough one because, it inevitably is gonna go to a wrestler who's got more name recognition, right? When you're
Right.
looking at kind of a ballot. Tricky, but Shotzi's done some great work.
And she began the year on television too, I think, technically, but like then she was, primarily a year as an independent. We're gonna maybe look at this next year. I think we want to make sure that, like, and Shotzi did do this, to be clear, but because this would open the floodgates for potentially anyone who's released from a big company to,
Yeah.
be in the mix. We're gonna have like a percentage of matches that have to be independent, which again Shotzi has done. She's been just very independently focused since, departing her WWE, but
Yeah.
well deserved, and one of our cover stars for this
Right.
issue.
And then the Stanley Weston Award, which is essentially a lifetime achievement award named after our founder, Stanley Weston. Two people get it this year. Two names that have come up in this conversation a couple times. Shawn Michaels gets one, and Brian Danielson the other. And talk about the best of the best. My kid, my 15-year-old, who has been wrestling in high school lately, is now starting to flirt with the idea of does he want to one day be a pro wrestler, and so he's been asking me to put on great matches for him. He wants to kind of like study, and inevitably, it's been one Shawn Michaels match after the next, and you forget like, my God, the body of work, and you talk about achievement awards. He had match of the year. I don't know if we wrote about it here.
I think it was
Maybe
11
5,
times.
6
Yeah, I did
years.
the
Yeah,
list.
I mean, it was just year after year after year after year against a range of opponents. We watched, Kurt Angle and Shawn Michaels the other day, from WrestleMania 21, and just incredible, right? And then the next year, Vince McMahon,
Wait,
he pulls a
Justin was
great match.
involved in the match?
No. I think he was still Aldo at the time. But, yeah, I mean, it's interesting, whenever there's discussion about, like, the greats, the Mount Rushmore, Shawn doesn't come up that much because he was never, a top draw at a big business time for WWE. But in terms of the art, the craft, it's as good as you'll ever get. And Bryan Danielson is probably, right there with him. I mean, so I think this year very much too in terms of I think technicians sort of underselling it, but again, in terms
Just
of,
worker.
artist, craft, yeah, workers, they are two of the very best ever to do it.
And Danielson, a student of Michael's, which is so interesting.
Yeah.
They both win in the same year. But what I like about it too, the symmetry of it is there's always these guys, depending on the generation you're from, where everyone points to them as, "Oh, he was the greatest. He's the one I patterned myself after." And I feel like Michaels was the guy for a generation, and now I feel like with this newest generation of wrestlers, it's becoming Danielson,
Yeah.
where it's like he's the guy, and before Michaels, it was Flair. People would say Ric Flair and so on and so forth. And so I feel like there's a nice, both of those guys. You could say what you want about a Mount Rushmore thing. You know how I love that whole thing. But in wrestling, because what makes it so hard is there's so many different criteria. So if you're talking about being the top star, being the biggest draw, yeah, I wouldn't put either one of those guys on. But if you're talking about what they do as workers and their matches and things, especially Michaels, he's got to be in that discussion. You know what I mean? But both of them, certainly for their generation, are.
Yeah, yeah, very similar in a lot of other ways too. I mean, you talk about them being students, but undersized,
Mhm.
not fine promos, but I don't think anybody would ever call them, the greatest promos, but
They're
very
not
good.
known for their promos
Yeah,
either
I
way.
think they both developed into strong characters over time, though, which is,
yeah.
I
Yep.
think, like they started as great, athletes, and then they evolved into
Stuck,
fully.
stuck on a desert island. Do you take Shawn Michaels matches or Bryan Danielson matches?
Shawn Michaels.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm. My answer is Bret Hart, but
Well, my answer to everything is Bret Hart, but I was trying to stay within the parameters of the. I'm definitely a Bret Hart over Shawn Michaels guy.
Brett's got one of these, doesn't he? Right? Has he
Uh,
gotten?
yeah,
does he?
yes, he does.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm gonna double check the year on this just so that you can rest easy on this, but
At least
yeah,
he could say then that he got it before Shawn. So,
yeah,
yeah.
2003.
wow. Okay, so yes.
And it's interesting because, every year there's a little bit of conversation about who gets this, and part of me is still thinking back, oh, well, the legends, I'm thinking folks from the '70s and '60s and '80s and that kind of thing, but it's crazy, I mean, with both Michaels and even Danielson, you're talking about somebody who's been at it, Bryan Danielson started his career close to 30
20
years ago, right?
yeah,
I would
25, at least 25 years. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And, I think some of the idea, at least the last couple of years, has been there are a lot of legends who've passed who deserve this honor. Um, I don't want it to turn into like an obituary kind of
Yeah.
thing. That's not to say that they can't get them at some point. Like we posthumously honored Nancy Benoit a couple years ago,
Mhm.
but which is the name that her family prefers her to go by. So I'm not, but woman.
Yeah.
And then, um, But the last couple of years has been trying to focus on kind of like honoring the people who are still with us while they can appreciate it, you know?
Yeah.
And I know
Yeah.
Brian was a big advocate a few years back for Terry Funk being honored, which thankfully, like we just like kind of just in time where he could get his plaque, appreciate it. Like, you know, it was
Yeah.
that's important, I think.
Yeah, I think 2 really good choices. Anyway, pick up the issue at pwi-online.com. We're really only skimming the surface of, what is in here.
It's
Absolutely
also
love
in stores now, so you can go out and you can see which one you find in the wild, or you can order your choice of one or even all four.
Yes, absolutely. All right, before we head out of here, Brian, anything you wanna plug? Wanna tell folks where they could get the book?
Yeah, sure. Irresistible Force: The Life and Times of Gorilla Monsoon. It's available wherever books are sold. For people that want a signed copy, you can reach out to me at brianrsolomon@yahoo.com or find me on social media.
Yes, award-winning book.
Yeah.
And, Kevin, anything, else you wanna, plug here? What are we working on for the next one? I don't know if you wanna preview
Yeah,
anything.
so the next issue, we have our annual Spotlight on Japan section, and we also have a feature story on CM Punk in that issue, kinda looking at his rivalries and, like, the line between, like, reality and, like, the show. It's all part of the show, enjoy the show. Um, but, that's
That's
coming up
pretty
in the
that's
next issue, along with, you know, all the columns. Brian has a great one on Harley Race and Terry Funk for the, NWA World Heavyweight Championship in that issue. And just yeah, we're kind of back into like quote unquote the normal issue. So for the people who are like
Yes.
less concerned with lists and rankings and things like that, we're gonna have next couple issues just full of features. Then we have super cards coming up. And then, you know, before you know it, we'll be back into list season again. But I don't even want to think about that right now.
Yeah,
But PWI-online.com, subscribe. We have a digital print bundle where you can, you know, get it early as soon as it's released, but then also have the copy for your collection.
excellent. All right, guys, thank you so much for doing this. We'll, do it again soon, and, fans, we will be back.